Okay, so what this talk about? Today we gonna talk about software architecture and software architecture design. The main concern that you should always think about and consider when you start thinking about software architecture is no code, and you will find many terms and definitions on internet for software architecture. The common term that you will observe among them is components and the relationships among these components. So if you are designing a new service, at the end, this whole service is a component. This is typically what you will find on internet. But also Martin Fowler raised a good definition for a software architecture, which I really liked. A software architecture is any important decision that will be hard to change in the future. It's more about the decisions. That's why today in interview you may observe or face a system design problem, right? And when you start thinking of a system design, you should start from decisions. Why you decide this? Based on what? And what is the trade-off? This is exactly the whole idea behind every software architecture you may observe or work with today. Today, we will talk about the mix. So we will talk about the high level, and also we will go deeper in code and start understanding how we link this together. I wrote this blog a couple of weeks ago, and this is about hexagonal architecture or ports and adapts. What is hexagonal architecture? It's the way of building a software architecture in software design pattern. So it's mostly related to the structure of the code, but driven from the components. So remember, always we mentioned at the beginning components, so we will touch this term a lot. Even if you start exploring mini software architecture, layered architecture, SOA, microservice, microkernel, space-oriented, any software architecture, you will find this term always there, component. So you have to understand always that a component is nothing but a unit in your architecture. Don't try to think about any source code. Remove any source code from your vision at the current moment. Just focus on this components. Today you have a solution, building a solution to solve a problem or to provide a service. This service should be directly related to a business domain. So at the end, you want to build something that solves a problem related to a specific business domain. If this is the case, then the core point and the central place around everything is the domain, the core domain. Hexagonal architecture started from this concept. Since I am building everything around the business domain, then the core point that everything should support is the core domain, is the business. Maybe used today as a business logic, maybe someone use it as a business logic, including the actual functionality, the functional requirement you are providing, or even the validation and rules you will define. If this in the middle, what should be other components? The definition that hexagonal follow is port and adapters. So if the core domain is the center place, every other component supporting or serving this domain should interact with this domain over a port and from adapter. I'll explain this in details, but let's first understand the whole idea. Think of this port like a door, like interface. So if you want to do anything, if you want to talk to a mail service, you should go through that door. If you want to go to reach or interact with a database, you should go through that door, that port. If you are dealing with message broker, you should go through that port. But that port needs also functionality driven or given by that service. So this message broker, I need to do something with this message broker. I need to do something with this database. I need to do something with this client, external client. And this is come inside adapter. So let's simplify, because I completely imagine that now you are start thinking about code. Simple thing, you are providing a service as API to external user. The API where it will be in an API layer, and the business logic will be inside your system. The API layer is the adapter. How should I reach to the business logic? Through the port. How this? We will come to this in few moments. If this is the case, then we can think of domain as a business logic, and everything else is infrastructure or external service or external component. And since almost all systems have a couple of infrastructure component, database, messaging system, caching system, whatever external service, even you are calling, all of this you can imagine as an infrastructure. I think this is native. This is the ideal thinking. Anyone can think of it. But what's the difference between old way we were working with and this? This is exactly what we're going to explain in the code with the example. But now let's move on. Maybe something, this is C# .NET Core. What is this? This is a class, a file, which is acting as a controller. It's exposing something to the user. So this is the endpoint. This is a definition of the endpoint. What is this? This is adapter. How it will reach to the domain should go through the port. Here there is a port, by the way, which is employee service. Employee service, all of us may be using this term. Yes, exactly. But how you gonna reach this service is what identify Hexagonal in comparison to other software architecture. This is what I just explained. You have the adapter, you have the inbound port, and the inbound port means the trigger coming from outside in. So we call this inbound port. If you are calling, for example, messaging system, if you are calling external service, then it will be outbound port. And it should be like this. So when you start designing your solution, it should always be like this. And this is rule of thumb for hexagonal architecture. And this what I uniquely identify hexagonal architecture. Everything here is pointing to the domain, the core domain. Look here. The adapter from inbound port is pointing to the domain. The adapter from data store or data layer is pointing to the domain. How this different than what we have today? Usually in layered architecture or in package architecture, everything is moving down. So you start from here, moving here, moving here, moving here, pointing to the data store, fetching the data, and bring everything to the first layer again. This is usually what we are doing. But Hexagonal is switching the direction. He is telling you there is no dependencies from core layer on any other supportive component. Everything should point to that core domain. Why? This is typically the values and the pros that you will get from building such architecture. Think of it now. Suppose you have a business model for any use case. You are building at the current moment user profile service. Ultimately, what I will follow controller, the API layer, calling the business domain, fetching data from the database. So the dependency will point down, fetch the data and moving up. What's the problem with this? Dependency. Now everything is dependent on the layer down or the layer below it. So today I am using MySQL. What will happen if I change it to Postgres? Immediately everything will start to crash. Why? Because the service is tightly coupled and dependent on the repository. How this make a difference? I have here something separate the upper layer from the down layer. With Hexagonal, if you wanted to change in the future, the database, the infrastructure, regardless what is it, even if you want to change the provider, the external provider, only the component that you are calling will change. Your business logic will stay untouched. And this is one of the core value you will get from this architecture. Maybe you will think of, I tried hexagonal before, I tried clean architecture before, and I found they are complex. Isn't layered architecture simple? Yes, it is. It's simple. And this is the trade-off. This is what we started the event with. It's simple while you are designing, but what are the cons you will face? Third thing we just mentioned, tight coupling. Either you are using layered architecture, either you are following something like package by feature, either you are using any software design that has this tight coupling and dependencies, you will observe this issue. Everything is tied to each other. If you try to change something, you have to change the business logic, which I don't need. Business logic is the business domain. It's the service. It's what I am solving. So it's tested. It's now on production. Why should I touch it? I don't need to touch any of this. All the business core domain component should be untouched. Yes, there is a trade-off. But the good thing with this architecture is once you mature and build it correctly, you will start observing directly a couple of added values.